It is June of 2018, and you are watching the last 10 minutes of a film called Hereditary, and something has gone wrong with the shape of the story. The haunted house movie you thought you were in has dissolved. A boy climbs a ladder into a treehouse filled with warm light. There are people inside, and they are bowing. There is a headless woman kneeling in the corner, and nobody in the room finds that strange. And then a voice, gentle as a nurse, welcomes the boy by a name that is not his. Hail, Paimon. The credits come, and you sit there in the dark, telling yourself that at least the name was made up. Because names like that are always made up. That name is sitting in a 17th century manuscript in the British Library right now. It was already in print the year before Shakespeare was born. The film itself was a first feature, written and directed by Ari Aster, released by A24 in June of 2018, after a Sundance premiere that had critics calling it the scariest debut in years, and it went on to earn about $80 million against a $10 million budget, which made it the biggest hit in its studio's history at the time. All of that success rests on a climax built around one borrowed name. And here is the part almost nobody who saw that film ever finds out. Horror movies invent their demons. This one mostly did not. Nearly every detail the film attaches to that name, the crown, the bowing, even the direction the cult faces when they call him, was lifted from real pages you can still read. And the single claim the entire plot depends on, the one that made you afraid, is the one thing the manuscripts never say. So, tonight, we open the file. 3 things in that final scene come straight out of the old catalogues, and I will count them for you. 1, 2, 3. Then the 4th thing, the invented one, and why the filmmakers needed it. And underneath all of it, a forgery, the most successful forged byline in the history of the occult, though the forger was not anyone in Hollywood. Hollywood borrows its scariest names from real shelves, and this channel keeps files on all of them. So, subscribe now and get comfortable in the dark, because the dark is where this one starts. This is who Paimon is, the real demon behind Hereditary. Start with the catalogue, because Paimon does not live in a legend or a whispered folktale. He lives in a list. The list is called the Ars Goetia, the first section of a 5-part collection that names itself the Lesser Key of Solomon, assembled by anonymous English compilers in the 1600s from older material. It is a catalogue of 72 spirits, arranged like a government in exile, each entry recording a rank, an office, a number of legions, and a seal. Dukes, presidents, marquises, earls. Look at that structure for a second, because it tells you what kind of document this is. Whoever compiled it did not imagine hell as chaos. They imagined it as a court, a mirror image of the kingdoms they lived under, with protocol, precedents, heralds, and territory. Even the number 72 is not random. Jewish tradition counted 72 nations of the world and 72 letters in the hidden name of God, and the catalogue answers that arithmetic with 72 spirits, a dark administration matched 1-to-1 against a holy one. This is a bureaucracy of the abyss, and 9 entries in, a king. The 9th spirit, the text says, is Paimon, a great king, and very obedient to Lucifer. He appears as a man, with a glorious crown on his head, riding a dromedary, a one-humped camel, and he does not arrive alone. Before him goes a host of spirits, in the shape of men, with trumpets, and well-sounding cymbals, and all other sorts of musical instruments. When he first comes, he roars, a great voice, and his speech cannot be understood unless he is compelled to speak plainly. The entry lists what he knows, and the list is not modest. He teaches all arts and sciences, and other secret things. He can reveal what the earth is and what holds it up in the waters. He gives dignities and lordships. He binds any man to the will of the one who deals with him. He commands 200 legions of spirits, and the text is oddly specific about their origin, part of them of the order of angels, and part of the order of powers. If he arrives alone, the operator is warned to give him an offering, and if he is called with full honors, 2 kings attend him, named Labal and Abalim, with their own trumpets. Most movie demons get a name. Paimon comes with a court. Hold that picture in your head, the crown, the music, the homage, the etiquette, because you have already seen almost all of it in the last 10 minutes of a film that never shows you a single manuscript. Count with me. Thing number 1 that the film took from the catalogues: the crown. In the treehouse, someone lifts an actual metal crown and sets it on the boy's head. Viewers read that as cult theater. It is quotation. The entry's very first physical detail, before the camel, before the trumpets, is a crown, most glorious, upon his head. And the dialogue makes the rank explicit. "You are Paimon," the voice says, "one of the 8 kings of hell." The number 8 is the film's own arithmetic. The manuscripts count their kings differently. But the kingship itself, the crown itself, is on the page. The prop department did not imagine a crown. They read one. Thing number 2. And this is the one that convinces people the screenwriters did their homework, because no one would invent a detail this dry. In the treehouse, the gentle voice explains how the boy was brought here. "We have looked to the northwest," she says, "and called you in." The northwest. Not a poetic direction, not a random compass point for atmosphere. The old entries on Paimon record exactly this, that he is observed toward the northwest, that the one who deals with him faces that quarter of the sky, because that is where this king keeps his seat. Screenwriters invent blood and shadows all day long. They do not invent municipal details, like a compass bearing. That line is not screenwriting. It is court procedure, copied. And once you see the procedure, the whole treehouse recomposes itself in front of you. The entry says a host goes before this king, figures in the shape of men, making music, paying homage. The entry says that when he comes, he must be given his due, an offering, honors, the etiquette owed to rank. Now look at the film's final image again. A room full of silent figures, bowed to the floor, before a crowned form, gifts laid out, a ceremony conducted with the discipline of a court. The cult of Hereditary is not behaving like movie Satanists. It is behaving like the retinue described in the entry, the procession that attends the 9th spirit wherever he is received. And thing number 3, the one hiding in plain sight from the first act of the film. Every one of the 72 spirits in the Goetia has a seal, a sigil, a signature of lines and curls the old operators drew and engraved. Paimon has his. Now go back through the film. The symbol on the telephone pole, the pole by the road where the worst moment of the movie happens, the pendant on the grandmother's necklace, the one the mother wears after her. Freeze the frame and put it next to the printed seal of Paimon, and they match, because the production copied it from the real diagrams. Half the audience thought those props were spooky set dressing. They were citations. The scariest prop in the movie is a footnote. So, the crown is real ink. The northwest is real ink. The seal is real ink. Which brings us to the 4th thing, the thing the whole plot runs on. The film's Paimon wants a body, specifically a male body. The grandmother's cult puts him first into a girl, and the film treats this as a catastrophic misfit, a king forced to ride in the wrong vessel, and the entire machinery of the story exists to move him into the boy. And that doctrine, the possession, the host, the male requirement, appears in no manuscript at all. Understand how the old catalogues actually frame these encounters, because the difference is the whole point. The Goetia is not a book about being entered. It is a book about audiences. In its frame, the spirit appears outside the operator, in front of him, visible, speaking, the way a foreign king appears before an ambassador. He arrives, he roars, he is compelled to speak clearly, he answers, he departs. Whatever you think of the men who wrote and copied those pages, their Paimon does not occupy anyone. There is no host in the transaction. The nearest the sources come to the film's idea is one strange, quiet detail, and it may well be the seed the writers inverted. The oldest printed entry describes the king's appearance with an odd phrase, a man with an effeminate face, a male king wearing a face that unsettles the categories. The film took that whisper and built a theology out of it, a spirit that demands maleness and rages in a girl. Good horror engineering, zero paper trail, and while we are separating ink from screenplay, add the smaller inventions to the same shelf. The clucking sound, the film's most imitated scare, is the screenwriters. The decapitations that mark the possessed are the screenwriters. Even the count in the famous line, "One of the 8 kings of hell," is the film doing its own arithmetic, because the catalogues never settle on 8. Everything about the name is borrowed. The parts that terrified you most are the parts with no source. One more real thread, though, and this one the film never pulled, which is a shame, because it is the oldest thread in the whole file. Look again at what the entry says Paimon actually does. He teaches all arts and sciences, secret things, the nature of the earth, and what holds it up in the waters. Of the 72 entries, again and again, the offices are professorships. These spirits confer knowledge, languages, rhetoric, astronomy, the locations of hidden things. If you watched the first episode of this channel, you have heard that job description before. The Book of Enoch's Watchers fell precisely as teachers, Azazel with metallurgy and cosmetics, others with sorcery, astrology, the reading of signs, heaven's curriculum sold to students who were not ready. The demon catalogues of the Renaissance, whatever their compilers knew or did not know, inherited that exact idea that the fallen do not merely tempt, they tutor. A movie about a demon who wants to teach through a stolen body would have been closer to the manuscripts than a movie about a demon who simply wants the body. The catalogue's Paimon is not hungry. He is a faculty chair with 200 legions. Which raises the better question, and it is where this story stops being about a movie. If Hereditary did not invent Paimon, who did? Follow the trail backward, and it gets older, stranger, and far more dishonest than anything A24 put on screen. The name is older than any printing press. It surfaces in the handwritten layer first, in the working manuals of late medieval magicians, the kind of books that were owned quietly and burned publicly. A 15th century necromancer's handbook, now in Munich, catalogued as CLM 849 and edited by the historian Richard Kieckhefer in a study bluntly titled Forbidden Rites, already knows Paimon by name. So does the Book of the Offices of Spirits, the manuscript catalogue that circulated in the 1500s. By the time anyone set the name in type, it had been passing from copyist to copyist for at least a century, and the man who finally printed it did so for the strangest reason in this entire story. The year is 1563. The place is Basel, where a Dutch physician named Johann Weyer, personal doctor to the Duke of Cleves and a student of the notorious scholar Agrippa, publishes a medical and theological book called De Prestigiis Daemonum, on the illusions of demons. Weyer's argument scandalized his century. He claimed the old women being burned as witches across Europe were not servants of Satan, but sick, deluded, and innocent, and that the real fraud lay with the self-appointed conjurors and their handbooks. And to prove how absurd the conjurers' literature was, he did something extraordinary. He printed their catalogue. As an appendix, he attached the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, the false monarchy of demons, 69 entries, copied from an older manuscript called the Book of the Offices of Spirits. Ranks, offices, legions, the dromedary, the trumpets, the northwest, Paimon, is there. Weyer even did the errors arithmetic, and the numbers show you how seriously the tradition took its own bureaucracy. By the reckoning attached to his catalogue, hell fields exactly 1,111 legions of 6,666 demons each, under 69 princes, a standing army of 7,405,926. Not about 7 million, exactly that number. Bureaucracies count. And Weyer, on purpose, left out the instructions for calling them, so that no reader could ever use his book as a manual. Read that again from a distance. The first printed home of Hereditary's demon was a debunking, published by a doctor trying to stop executions, who deliberately broke the machine before showing it to the public. 21 years later, in 1584, an English gentleman named Reginald Scot translated that catalogue into English, inside his own skeptical bombshell, The Discoverie of Witchcraft, a book so hostile to demon hunting that King James himself wrote against its ideas. Paimon now speaks English, and then, somewhere in the 1600s, the tone changes. Anonymous English compilers gather the old material into the Lemegeton, the lesser key of Solomon. The list grows from 69 to 72. The seals, which Weyer refused to print, are drawn back in. The instructions come back, and on the front of the whole collection goes a byline, King Solomon. The claim, made with a straight face, is that the wisest king of Israel personally bound these 72 spirits and left this catalogue as his testament. And notice who kept this archive alive at every single step, because the pattern is almost funny. Weyer printed the catalogue to discredit it. Scot translated it to discredit it. 2.5 centuries later, a French writer named Colin de Plancy, an admirer of Voltaire and a professional scoffer, compiled the Dictionnaire Infernal to catalogue superstitions he did not believe, and his 1863 edition commissioned the engraver Louis Le Breton to draw the demons, including the crowned king on his dromedary, the single image nearly every modern picture of Paimon descends from. The believers hid their copies. The skeptics published them. Almost everything the modern world knows about this catalogue, it knows because 3 men who thought it was nonsense could not resist putting it in print. That claim on the byline, though, did not start in the 1600s. It is the renewal of a franchise that was already ancient. Centuries earlier, in the early years of the Christian era, someone wrote a Greek text called the Testament of Solomon, in which the king interrogates demons one by one, compels them with a ring given by heaven, and puts them to work building the temple. It is the grandfather of the entire genre, and scholars date it roughly 1,000 years after Solomon lived. So let the verdict land where the evidence puts it. The manuscripts are real. You can stand in a reading room and hold them. The demon's entries are real ink, copied by real scribes, printed by real skeptics. And the byline is a forgery. Solomon wrote none of it. His name was borrowed the way luxury forgers borrow a trademark, because a demon catalogue signed by an anonymous London scribe sells nothing, and a demon catalogue signed by the wisest king who ever lived has now sold for 1,500 years. Hollywood, at least, put its own name on its inventions. The grimoire tradition never did. Now, one honest word before the finish, because I know who watches files like this one, and I have read your comments on other channels. Some of you paused before pressing play. Some of you said a prayer first. I will not laugh at that, and I will not tell you what to believe about what these names refer to. but I will tell you exactly what happened here tonight. You heard history read aloud. Catalogue entries, copied by scribes, printed by skeptics, shelved by librarians, quoted by a film. No rite was performed, no instruction was given, and the operative parts of those old books stayed where they have been for 400 years, on the shelf. The Church's own scholars did the same for centuries, naming and cataloguing what they warned against, because they understood that a warning needs a name. Weyer printed the names and withheld the keys. 4.5 centuries later, this channel does the same. And the anchor you can stand in front of is not a legend. Sloane manuscript 3825 is a physical object in the British Library's collection in London, a 17th century volume in a 17th century hand, with the spirit's seals inked onto its pages, Paimon's among them, and it has outlived every person who ever copied from it or scoffed at it. The film's audience numbered in the millions. The manuscript needed only to survive, and it has. If you want to check any of this, and you should, the trail is public. Weyer's Pseudomonarchia Daemonum of 1563 is public domain and transcribed online. Scot's Discoverie of Witchcraft of 1584 is public domain. The Goetia's standard scholarly text is Joseph Peterson's edition of the Lemegeton, built on the British Library's Sloane manuscript 38225, and the classic Paimon image, the crowned rider on the dromedary, is Louis Le Breton's engraving from the 1863 edition of de Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal. Every name I just said out loud is your map. One promise before the last scene. At 1,000 subscribers, YouTube turns on description links, and from that day, every manuscript, edition, and engraving named on this channel sits linked under its episode. Until then, the spoken names are the links. If you want the shelf built faster, subscribing is the fastest brick, and it is my one ask tonight. And leave me one answer in the comments on your way out. Pazuzu's file is next in this series, the real entity behind The Exorcist, and the demon the Conjuring films call Valak has a file waiting too. Tell me which real demon behind which film you want opened after that. And this Saturday, the biggest door in the vault, the complete story of the Book of Enoch, beginning to end, in one full documentary. So go back one last time to that dark room in 2018, to the moment the credits rolled and you told yourself the name was made up. You know better now. You know which parts of that scene had a paper trail, the crown, the compass bearing, the seal on the pole, and you know the one part that never did. The film ends. The catalogue does not. Because the film is still streaming somewhere tonight. Sloane 3825 is still shelved in the British Library, and the 9th entry is still a king. Le Breton's dromedary is still printed in the Dictionnaire Infernal. The seal on the telephone pole is still the seal on the manuscript page. And the name they hailed in the Treehouse was already in print the year before Shakespeare was born, exactly the way Weyer set it down.